I've been to 87 countries now. I want to stay in China as long as I can. I don't ever want to go back to America. I'm very worried. I'm 62 and I'm worried that I'm not going to have enough to retire and I don't know what I'll do. I don't know. I don't have a lot of savings. That's all right. Yeah, it's Carol there.
All right, here's the full interview with Michael, as many of you guys requested. And as I promised, if you guys enjoyed at any point during this video, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. Here he is. Hi, please tell us your name and where are you from?
My complete name is Sergius Michael Patrick Zagaroff. I go by Michael Zagaroff. I was born in Houston, Texas, in the United States, but I've lived in China for the past 8 years, and I live right now in Shandong, Yantai.
And what are you doing in China? Why are you living there?
I teach English as a second language. When I first graduated from the University of Texas in 1987, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had a degree in Middle Eastern history, which is useless unless you're going to become a professor. And a friend said, let's go to Mexico for the spring break. And I went to Mexico and I said, I like this place. I'd like to live here. What could I do? Teach English. Teach English. So I taught English there for 2 years. Later went Panama, taught there for a while. Thought if I'm going to continue teaching, I need to learn how to teach. So I went to San Francisco and did a 6 weeks course in teaching English as a second language. Got certified to do it. And since then, it's been 7 countries, and for the past 8 years, China.
What do you like and dislike about China? Some pros and cons.
Wow. What do I like? The Chinese people on the whole, are fairly civilized, cultured, generous, inquisitive. You're from somewhere else? Really? Where are you from? Oh, they're so interested. Negative things. I don't know. Honking the horn in traffic is a negative thing that I don't like. And I notice that no one does it here. There's very little honking here. It's really popular in China. My brother says, well, you've been there 8 years. Are you driving a car now? I said, no, I don't want to drive here because they drive like fish. They drive like this. They don't pay attention. Nobody uses the mirrors. They just drive. And I don't want to drive there. And so they have something like Uber, which is called Didi, and that's the easiest way. I don't worry about a car. So, and the language is probably the biggest negative thing. I've been there so long. Another thing my brother says, how's your Chinese? I say, well, I think I speak it fairly well, but the Chinese don't understand me. They're just like, and it's funny. My friend Kong will be with me and I'll say something and the people look at me like, and they'll say to him, what did he say?
Yeah.
And he'll say it and it sounds to me exactly like what I said. And they'll go, oh, and then they'll answer him.
Yeah.
I'm like, what did I say? He says, you got the tone wrong. I can't get there are 4 tones. And if you don't, the Chinese speak fast to each other. And I think tones are not as important. But if you speak slowly the way I do, the tones are more important, and that's when I get the tone wrong. I try to say, think about what could I possibly be trying to say?
Yeah.
Because I'm a teacher at a university, and I've taught in high schools, primary schools, and I say, the word H-E-L-L-O, hello. You could say, hello, 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 hello. I'm still going to understand you, but the Chinese, if I don't get it exactly right, it's like, I don't know what you're saying. Yeah. But I think it's a little bit of, China was closed to the world for thousands of years, and it's really only been open 50 years. The U.S. and China established relations in 1974. So for a lot of Chinese people, especially from the countryside and from smaller places, they see a white face and they just think, I'm not going to understand this person.
Yeah. They have their mind made up already, maybe.
So they just don't listen that carefully. Yeah. And I will say something in Chinese and they'll say, Ting Po Dong, I don't understand. Yeah. And I will say it again and I say, listen, I'm speaking Chinese. And they'll go, oh yeah, you are. And then they'll talk to me.
What are you doing here in Laos?
I have lived in several places in China that were cold, and I don't like the cold. I would rather be baking in summer in dry desert or jungle than to be cold. I can always cool off a little bit and be happy. You know, if it's hot, I can do this and I feel a little better. Can you see that? Yeah. But if it's cold, and for the last 3 years before this year, I was teaching in Hangzhou, which is west of Shanghai, and it's a beautiful, huge city. 15 or 20 million people. I mean, China has cities like you can't imagine. But it was a park-like setting city. Trees and forests and parks and lakes and beautiful. I loved it. And I was a very popular teacher there. But China for a long time has had a problem with their population in that last year, 20 million people graduated from university. Well, 20 million people need to find jobs. And if they can't find jobs, you've got 20 million unemployed, and that's a problem for a government. So the government has a policy of women at 55 and men at 60 must retire and go on government pension. Well, I'm not ready to retire at 60. During the pandemic, they loosened the restrictions, but they've started them again. And so I was in this city of Hangzhou, beautiful city, at a university teaching and very happy, and they loved me. I was a very popular teacher. Like, everybody loved me. But they said, Michael, we can't renew your work visa. You're 62. We can't do it.
62, you don't get that.
No, thank you. So I searched and searched because I don't want to leave China. I want to stay in China as long as I can. I don't ever want to go back to America. I don't like America. I just don't. I'm not going to say anything more. It's my country, and I love my country, and I love my people, but there's some things that the government does that I don't agree with, that I don't want to support. So, I lose my tangent sometimes.
That's okay. So what other countries have you been to?
Oh my. I've been to 87 countries now. Oh, you were asking about travel, first of all. Well, I moved from Hangzhou to Shandong Yantai, which is up in the northeast. It's a coastal city, and we're across from North Korea, across the Yellow Sea. But it's the coldest place because it's on a peninsula.
Yes.
It gets a lot of moisture, so a lot of snow. And so the people said, you're kidding, Michael, we have 8-foot snow drifts. I thought, oh God. So I went through 2 snows, and it wasn't terrible. It was a little snow, it's kind of fun. But I thought it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
So I have, for the last 4 or 5 of the 8 years, I've left China and gone to someplace warm. So 3 years ago, Thailand. I was in Thailand when the COVID began. Then last year to Cambodia and Vietnam, and this year I came to Laos. So you asked about my teaching. I've taught in 7 or 8 countries. I've been to 87 countries. People ask, where are you from? And I think, well, all of us have a lot of prejudices when someone says, where are you from? Like there was a man in the restaurant here. In the breakfast room. And I said, where are you from? Canada. And you? America. And I could already hear it in his voice. America. Trump. Because Trump has said he's going to take over Canada.
Yeah.
I said, what do you think of that? Well, Trump talks, doesn't he? And I said, yeah, but I could already hear in his voice that he wouldn't want to befriend me because I'm from America. But even an ant in a pile of shit doesn't choose where to live or where to be born. That's where he lives,
Yeah.
So.
Okay, from the 87 countries you've been to, any single one stand out, or are they all the same? Tell me a little bit about all of them.
I loved Turkey. I loved Istanbul. I loved being able to go to the hammam and be scrubbed by a big burly man, and I loved the food. And, one thing I didn't like about Turkey was the food. In restaurants, they weigh the food. When you buy food, they have a little plate. They'll put something and they'll weigh it. Yeah. They want to be sure you're not getting too much, and you got to pay for that. But other than that, Mexico, I lived in Mexico. It was the first country I lived in. I lived there twice more because I learned Spanish, and I can communicate fluently in Spanish. I was also a student in Germany when I was in high school. I was an exchange student, and I speak German 80% fluency. I can't really talk about chemical structure or politics, but if I was going to say, I moved to Yantai Shandong because the university there told me we can keep you until you're 70. Okay. We don't have that restriction. And recently, a friend of mine, a Chinese professor at the same university, told me, Michael, you better check. They gave us a big lecture. They say all teachers over 60 are going to have to retire. And I thought, oh no. And I said, the law school hired me and told me that wasn't a restriction. So I contacted the dean. I said, am I going to lose he said, don't worry. We don't have that restriction in the law school. Okay. You can stay on here.
Should get that in writing, bro.
We guarantee, or we will pay you this, because I don't know what I'd do. I don't have a lot of savings. Most people save money all their lives for eventual retirement. When George Bush, after 9/11, when George Bush decided to attack Iraq, which had no links in any way possible even to 9/11, when he decided to do that, I was so against it, and I protested, and I was in marches, and I was at letter writing campaigns and such. But I talked to a lawyer, and I said, I want to give you a scenario. Somebody comes to me with a gun and says, I want to kill that man, but I have no bullets. Give me the money for the bullets. If I give the man the money, am I in any way culpable, guilty for the crime? He said, yes, you are. You're an accessory. I said, well, then the United Nations has told George Bush that he cannot attack Iraq. It's an international crime of war. It's illegal because they have no threat to us. But he's going to do it. So if I continue paying taxes to the U.S. government and they're used for that war, I'm guilty also. He said, in a way, yeah. I said, then I won't. I wrote him a letter. I wrote a letter to George Bush, and I said, I'm not going to pay taxes anymore. Yeah. Now, I didn't just stop paying taxes. I just made sure that no matter what I was doing for work, I didn't earn enough to pay taxes. See. And I've done that for 30 years. But unfortunately, if you don't pay taxes, you don't get Social Security.
So are you worried about that?
I am. I'm very worried. I'm 62 and I'm worried that I'm not going to have enough to retire, and I don't know what I'll do. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
What about families, friends, that stuff? Tell me about your personal life.
Oh, I don't want to go into the deepest, darkest parts of it, but I have a brother, and I don't think he would do anything to help me. I have a sister, but I really don't want to go there. Well,
whatever you want.
I got a little money when my mother died in 2017. Okay. So there's a little money, and I did spend quite a while working with an indigenous tribe in Panama, and they've always said, you can come and live with us. There are 2 or 3 different families among the Kuna who've said, Michael, we'll always have room for you. So that may be what I do.
Wait, why not, man? You look, actually, I'm trying to look your look, man. You look like you just came from like a storybook, first of all. That's how you met, actually. Yeah. It looks like you're some kind of like Indiana Jones stuff going on. What's going on?
Yeah, well, this is a pith helmet. It's not a real pith helmet. It's a woven one. Pith helmets were made, if you go to Vietnam, you'll see that the policemen wear them, and it's a very thick sort of, almost, it's a natural styrofoam, but it's an insulation, and they make their hats out of it. But I just like the style, and I've never seen anybody else with one. Yeah. Now the little button here has Mao on it, Mao Zedong of China, and his favorite slogan, which is Wei Ren Men Fu, to serve the people. And I think of my life, and I think that's what I'm about, serving people, serving humanity, trying to make the world a little better place, right in the corner where you are. The shirt, I love colors. I've never been one to wear black. I do have I'm black pants on right now, but in China, I'm too big to buy clothes. So I have to have them made So I go to a tailor, choose the cloth, they make shirts, make pants, make this. And so this was made for me. You can't tell on camera. It hadn't been washed in 3 weeks, and it really, yeah, colorful. And I tend to drop food on myself when I'm eating. My mouth I'm always talking. So food drips. With this, you can't really tell. It kind of hides this, yeah.
And I see you got some wind going on over
well, can you see it?
Oh, we can, yeah.
When I first came to China, I first came to China in 1998. And I lived in Shanghai for 2 years and then in Henan for a year. And then I left China. My mother came to visit me. And I could see that she was getting older, and I decided that I wanted to spend more time with her and take care of her. I came home and I said, okay, Mom, I can live in your garage apartment and help take care of you, because they were going to put her in a nursing home and forget her. Take her money, sell the house. I didn't want to go there, but I lived in the garage, and she had her independence. She still drove. She drove until she was 88. And she started getting older. We started traveling together. We took cruises. We took dozens of cruises 3 times across the Atlantic to Barcelona. There's a city I love, Barcelona. Barcelona, Istanbul, Havana, Cuba, Cartagena, Colombia, coastal Casablanca, Alexandria, Egypt. These coastal sailors, exotic ports. I just love these places. So when I first came to China, again, the last conversation I had with my mom before she had a major stroke, 2 days before she died, she was fine. 91. I'm glad she didn't have to go through COVID. I'm glad she, and she still could hear, she could see, she could everything. She didn't lose anything. She just, good time to die, I'm sure she was fine. But the last conversation where she said, Michael, you really ought to go back to China. You love China. You were such a good teacher. You need to go back to China. So 2 months, I sold my house, and I was living in California in Palm Springs, sold my house, sold everything, came back to China. When I first got here, I had to go to Hong Kong to get my visa. You had to leave China and come back, and depending on what kind of visa you had. So I went to China. I bought this bracelet. I love purple jade. And this one, and it's interesting. I was able to, I was in Hong Kong at a time when they were having troubles. The time of troubles, they call it. And nobody was buying. There were no tourists there. So I went to this market and I saw this bracelet and I said, I like this color. How much do you want? 3,000 yuan. I said, I'll give you 500. No way. Well, I got it for 500. I just kept, marketing. You say, how much? And they tell you walk away. Oh, I'll come back. Come back. How much we have? I'll give you 500.
Some countries you can reduce it by 10x. Easily,
yeah.
Like in Vietnam, somebody wanted to sell me this shirt, specifically 3 million. I got it for like $2 at the end.
There you go.
500,000.
And I had friends in Guangzhou. I lived in Guangzhou at one time, and I had a friend who lived in a town where all the jade companies are. And I went to him and he said, oh, you got a great bracelet, Michael. What'd you pay? And I told him, he says, don't ever say that. If anybody asks you what you paid, say 10,000 yuan. I said, really? He said, watch. We went to visit one of his friends who had a really nice store. Yeah. I showed him my bracelet. He said, wow, this is incredible, Michael. What'd you pay? I said, 10,000. He said, you got a seal. I thought, boy, did I get a seal. That was my first one. And these two I bought in Cambodia. And they're all Burmese jade. That's where the best jade comes from. This green one is an ideal color, but it has some flaws. And this one has some purple also in it, some flaws, but they were not very, very expensive. And I just liked them. And then this silver one is a Miao, which are here called the Hmong minority people, but in China they're called the Miao. And the one problem is, at night, scratch myself, jing, 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 poor Kong. You kept me up all night. What were you doing? Shaking your arm, all this noise.
Sure, scratching yourself, huh?
Yeah, you don't want that on the film, but yeah. And the gold ring, has Guanyin, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Can you see that?
Just bring it a bit closer. Yeah, now I can see it.
Yeah. And that ring was made of gold that I panned in a river.
Wow. You collect your own gold.
Collect my own gold, make my own jewelry.
Any weird stories during your travels? It's like, that's a very interesting story, collecting your own gold. But anything crazy happen to you, something dangerous, or this holy shit moment?
National Geographic has always been one of my favorite magazines. I don't even know if they produce it anymore. But they did an issue, now it's 40, 50 years ago, and it was about the 5 places in the world where the oldest people in the world are. And they said that one of those places was Hunza, this area of far northern Pakistan. Something about the climate, the water is all melted glacier, it has gold in it. So they eat very little meat, they eat a lot of apricots, and there's just something about it. They had people that were living to be 120, 130. The National Geographic went there with a specific series of tests and examinations to do because they were thinking illiterate people, they may not know how long a year is, but you would interview these people and you could more or less figure out, yeah, they probably are right around that age. And so there was a man shown in the magazine, Wazir Juno. Wazir is like a minister to the king. Well, he had been there a long time. So they interviewed him and they figured out he was probably 108. And I wanted to meet that man, I wanted to meet a man who had touched 3 centuries, So, or 2 centuries anyway. And I go to Hunza and I'm one of the first 1,000 non-Pakistanis to go there.
Yeah.
Now it's open. Now there's hotels and restaurants and da-da-da. When I was there, it was really remote, really hard to get to. And I went to Hunza, and I'm asking around, Wazir Juno, oh yeah, that's the hill. Climb, old ancient stone house, knock on the door. Wazir Juno, this looks like to me an old man. Well, that's his grandson. Brings me in, and here's this ancient, venerable man who himself is so pleased to see me.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything, but I sought him out. And please sit down. They speak a little English because it was Indian colony, Have some tea, have some fruit. They invited me for dinner and they said, what would you like? I said, you've got some amazing fruit here.
Yeah.
Well, they had 20 kinds of fruit. They just spread it on the table. That's what we had for dinner. Wazir Juno he was 113 when I met him. He was 108 in the magazine.
Yeah.
113. And he lived to be 118 years old. Now, have you heard of Shangri-La?
Yes. Shangri-La
is an idealized concept of a place somewhere where people live forever. It's the Fountain of Youth or something. And it was made up by a man named James Hilton, who was an English writer who wrote a book called Lost Horizon about some people in China in the 1930s, foreigners trying to escape a revolution, whose plane crashes in the Himalayas, and some monks come and take them to this magical valley. And I realized when I was in Hunza, I said, this might be Shangri-La. And I found out later that was the inspiration for Shangri-La, Hunza, that James Hilton had read about, had never been there. But here I was sitting with a 113-year-old man in his house, drinking tea, and I thought, it occurs to you sometimes, who are you? Who are you? Michael from Texas? And you're sitting with that may not be the thing you're asking about.
That's incredible. That's honestly what we want to hear, the reason why you travel. Do you ever have any regrets, decisions that just not, do you ever consider, why didn't I stay in the U.S.? Why did I travel? I don't have any retirement plans now. Do you have any regrets about that?
There's a slight regret about not having money, but I left Houston in 2015 because we had a second flood, huge flood, and it flooded my mother's house. The first time was 3 or 4 years before it flooded her house. In the recent fires in Los Angeles, and I haven't heard the news in 3 weeks, I don't know if they're still burning, but I think about people who lose everything. a house burns and things are different now. Now you have digitization of photographs and documents. We didn't in the past. So you had a fire, a flood, it's gone. And all the pictures of my wife, of my family, gone. Ancient pictures of ancestors, gone. Luckily, I have some things on my computer. Luckily. But to lose so much. But when the house flooded the second time, my sisters told my mother, come and live with her. Yeah. And I was in the garage apartment, and the family decided to sell the house. Now, 12 years before, when I'd first come home from China to take care of Mom had said, Michael, I'm out of money. I said, what? You had $500,000. Where is it? But Mom said, Michael, I've run out of money. And the only way I can think of having money is to take a reverse mortgage. So you get the money for the value of your house, live on it. And when you die, your house gets sold, but the money goes to the bank and you get nothing. So my mother had always said, someday you're going to inherit my house. And I thought, wow, I'm going to inherit a $500,000 house. But I thought, Mom, no, you need this. So she borrowed the money, she got the money, and we traveled. We spent it together. We traveled. After the first flood, when all of her floors, which were wood, warped, she had them all taken out and she had tile put in, like the hotel lobby. And then she said, but this is cold. I need a Persian rug. I thought, yeah, you need Persian rugs. So we went to an auction of a Persian rug company that was supposedly going out of business. Yeah. And they were serving a Persian food banquet and wine. Well, wine is the thing to do. If you're going to have an auction, serve wine. So my mother ended up buying Persian rugs, huge palace rugs for every room of the house, and extras, which she gave away. Cheap, even if it's no. She still spent, $5,000 or $10,000 a piece for them. But in the second flood, they were all destroyed. The flood water just, you could have them clean, and we had some of them clean stuff, but I moved to California and bought a little house in the desert. I had some money. Mom helped me. And I thought I'd go out and live in the desert, and my mother was going to live with my sister. And I didn't see my mom after I'd seen her daily for 13, 14 years. I didn't see her again. I spoke to her almost daily. Yeah. And I don't want to go into the negativity there because there's a lot of negativity about my sister and the way she treated Mom. Kept milking her. My sister is one of those crazy cat women. She weighs about 400 pounds and she lives in a house with 15 cats. And I keep having this recurring thought. Someday she'll trip, she'll hit her head, she won't be able to move, and the cats will feast upon her body. And I won't be sad. I was going to say, when my mother had her stroke, I was in California and my brother called me and he said, Mom's had this horrible stroke and you're the eldest son. What should we do? I said, turn off the machines. She wouldn't want to live on a machine. Yeah. So he said, okay. So half an hour later he called me and says, Mom died. I said, okay. I was not horribly sad. I'd had a wonderful life with my mom. I was sad to lose her, but she was 91. Things start falling apart, But my sister, I could hear her in the back weeping. My brother, but I didn't weep. Now, my mother gave her body to the medical school that she graduated from. She was a biochemist. And they used her body for 3 years for teaching. And she always used to say, Michael, I'm going to give my body to the medical school. Be sure you get my teeth. There's a lot of gold teeth, I don't know what happened to her teeth. But eventually they cremated her body and sent my brother the ashes. And I needed a new debit card. My debit card expired, and so he got me a debit card to my bank in California. And he sent it to me. And I said, well, what's this in the bag? Yeah. And then here's a t-shirt, a debit card, and then a bag of sand. He said, Mom, some of Mom's ashes. So I have been looking for the perfect little container to have. And I'm really thinking I'm going to get a little Tibetan thing that I can wear and put some of her ashes in there and just keep her with me. But she's with me anyway.
course. It looks like you're very close with your mom. Finally, I want to get some of your advice for anyone that wants to travel, but they're kind of either on the fence or unsure. What advice do you have for them?
Do it. If it takes selling some of what you think is necessary in your life. I wanted to go back to China, and I had a set of 16th century Spanish chairs that I really valued. And they were beautiful ancient wooden chairs. I sold them to a hotel in Palm Springs. I can go onto their website and see my chairs.
Yeah.
It's great, but I don't need them. I had an autograph of Marlene Dietrich, a famous German actress. I sold that. I sold most of my good stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did because it allowed me to travel. So live a simpler life. You don't really need name brands. People I have Chinese ask me, what brands do you like? I said, none. I have nothing that has a name on it. Why should I provide free advertising to a company? I don't wear anything that's an advertisement. And be willing to travel cheaply. You don't need 4-star, 3-star. You can go to this is a 1 or 2-star hotel. The breakfast is fairly simple, but what do you need? You need a bed. You don't even always need hot water. If it's a hot place, you need cold water to bathe in. So be able to travel cheaply. Don't take it all with you. I always take too much. I take too many clothes.
Yeah.
I take too many shoes. You can probably find it where you go. If you really need it, buy them there when you get there. Yeah. Be willing to eat in the cheap places. Thailand, the best food is on the street. I've noticed even in China since I've been living there, the best food is not in the fancy places. The best food is what grandma and grandpa make on the coal burner, and you can find that, and you can find that here. You can go to the villages and have wonderful food. So be willing to travel cheaply. Travel on the trains in 2nd and 3rd class. Travel on the buses. Meet the real people. I never do a tour. Now I will say, this trip, I took one of the first and last tours I will ever take. Group tour. Because I went to this company in Luang Prabang. There were so many things that I wanted to see that I wasn't sure I'd be able to find on my own.
Yeah.
A waterfall, a Hmong tribal village, a cave, a this, a that, And this one company put together a whole 8:30 in the morning to 5:30 in the evening tour, including a boat trip up the Mekong River, a wonderful lunch. It was $65. And why? Because they usually have 10 to 20 people, but they only had 4. So it was an English couple and me and Kong. And it was great. It was wonderful. And I got to see everything that I wanted to see, had this wonderful meal on the boat, watched the sunset. So be willing to do it on the cheap, and you can really have a great time. You don't have to do a 2-week tour. You can extend it because you're doing it on cut rate, but it's not cut rate. You're going to have a better experience by doing it simply.
Got it. Well, Michael, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your story.
Oh, I've enjoyed this so much too. Thank you.
And that was Michael. Leave your thoughts down below. Anything you want to share. What do you think of his experiences, his decisions, and his life in China? If you take your time to write it, I'll take the time to respond. Thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you're new. I'll see you guys the next time. Bye.